What's up guys, Donald speaking. So, Castlevania's first 4 seasons have ended just a few months ago. The Netflix adaptation brought a lot of depth to the series' story. However, there's a catch. There are countless Castlevania games, and not only many of them are bad or dated, but also the sheer number of games can be quite overwhelming for newcomers. You know, where do I start? With that in mind, I decided to create a 3-part guide to Castlevania games. Each part will cover a different type of Castlevania, and there's 3 in total: Classicvanias, Metroidvanias, and 3D-vanias. They're wildly different from one another, and there's both good and bad games in every single category. In this very first part, I'll be telling you the top 4 Classicvania games you must play. So hit that like button now and subscribe so you don't miss out on the second and third parts of this series. So first off, what the hell is a Classicvania? In a nutshell, Classicvanias are all of the Classicvania games that came out before Symphony of the Night, the game where Netflix's Alucard got his dashing looks from. They have a classic gameplay style where you go from one stage to the next and have no character leveling up, and only have the character's standard weapon and sub-weapons like the cross, the axe, the holy water, and the knife. And also, you have a lives and continues system. Sans very few rare occasions, you cannot save in Classicvania games. Instead, you get a password system. Each password takes you to a specific stage. This may seem like the forefather of our modern-day saving, but it also had other purposes. If you simply wanted to skip ahead in any particular game, all you needed was a password. So now that you know what a Classicvania is, here are the top 4 Castlevania games you must play. First up, we have Super Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo. This was a reboot of sorts of the very first NES game, with much improved graphics and gameplay. It was also the very first Castlevania where a Belmont finally understood they could attack in other directions other than straight ahead. There's quite the variety in level design, interesting bosses, amazing music, and great controls. You see, one of Classicvania's biggest flaws are the death pits. You fall into them, you die. This put off a lot of players, myself included. However, while Super Castlevania 4 still presents this sort of trap, they're nowhere near as cheap as they used to be. What you get here is a very solid game with pretty good difficulty progression. The last couple of stages have a bit of a difficulty spike, but they're still doable without much frustration. This is one very well-balanced Classicvania, and the main problem about Classicvanias is that the vast majority of them was not. It was a killer game for its time, and it's sure as hell a solid game to this day. Next up, Castlevania Bloodlines. This is one of the forgotten treasures in the franchise. Castlevania Bloodlines, or New Generation if you live in Europe, it was the only Castlevania game to be officially released on the Genesis. And this is one of the best one-off games from a larger series the world has ever gotten. Bloodlines wasn't just a part of a game from a different system. No. It was a full-blown Genesis game. You see, Nintendo had a very family-friendly policy, whereas Sega didn't. So the sprites and overall feel of the game are much darker, somber. The soundtrack is also very unique. While it certainly retains the Castlevania DNA, it's a killer original score in its own right. And this is also one of the very few Classicvanias where you get to play as different characters. You can play as John Morris, the first non-Belmont to ever wield the Vampire Killer, and Eric Lacard, a Spaniard who fights with a halberd. They are expressively different from one another. While John is a straightforward Belmont type of character, Eric is also able to perform huge leaps, making good use of alternate routes and reaching distant places John cannot get to. This warrants at least 2 very interesting playthroughs. And oh yeah, the gameplay is substantially faster than other Classicvania games. This is definitely a lost gem worth giving a good polish and having a go at. Every now and then I whip out this game and give it a very good go. It's so good. Next, we have the Demon King of all Classicvanias, a game that has eluded Western audiences for years. Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Originally released in Japan for the PC Engine in 1993, Rondo of Blood, known originally as Chi no Rondo, the translation is quite literal here. This game would only see an official Western release in 2007 with the PSP's Dracula X Chronicles. Rondo of Blood is held in very high regard by almost everyone who played it, yours truly included, and rightfully so. Being the first Castlevania title to make use of CD-ROM technology, its soundtrack had a vastly superior audio quality. The compositions themselves were pretty grand and epic too. The stages were colorful and vibrant. Rondo of Blood has some of the prettiest bosses I've ever seen in a 2D game. The battle against the werewolf still gives me the chills every single time. And speaking of bosses, I particularly love the fight against Death atop the broken ship's mast. Death's outfit and moves give me the distinct impression that that battle in particular has nothing to do with Dracula. It's personal. Rondo of Blood has multiple paths that you can take, and believe me, they mean a lot. Your choices will really matter here. You know the bosses you saw in this video? First, they're just a few of the ones you're gonna meet, and second, you're not gonna face them on a single playthrough. Different paths will take you to entirely different stages, yielding entirely different bosses, and they're all so much fun to fight. Some are hard as shit. And even after you manage to beat every single branching path in existence, trust me, you will keep coming back to this game because it's so good, it's so amazing. Everything about Rondo of Blood keeps drawing you back in. Remember, this is the Demon King of all Classicvanias. And you'll also end up saving different characters, one of them being a very young Maria Renard. She then becomes a playable character, and her playing style is completely different than that of Richter Belmont. Instead of using a whip, she fights with the power of nature. She uses the power of animals. Not only is that cute, but also it warrants even more playtime for this masterpiece of a game. This is also the very first Castlevania to ever have anime-style cutscenes. Of course, this may seem commonplace nowadays, but back then, very few people actually did it, and they were all voice-acted too. And here's a fun fact. Rondo of Blood's final battle is the very same battle Richter has against Dracula at the beginning of Symphony of the Night. The only difference is that instead of talking before duking it out, the exchange between Dracula and Richter actually happens after our fellow Belmont defeats the Lord of the Night. And what I also like about this dialogue is that its execution and presentation are a lot more philosophical too. So Rondo of Blood is one game that every single person who's looking to get into Castlevania must play. And before we move on to our very special and elusive feature, I want to thank you, really, for staying with me and watching these videos, man. We make them for you guys. And you know what I'd also be very thankful for? Payment. Yes, because you see, those videos, they take a lot of time to be made. So if you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe, and also share this video with your friends. And now I present you the most elusive Classicvania of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth. This is a remake of the 1989 Game Boy title, Castlevania The Adventure. The original game was horrible. Play it at your own risk, alright? With stunning graphics, smooth gameplay, and colossal soundtrack. This is still a Classicvania through and through, but many adjustments were made to the gameplay and its mechanics, making it one of the smoothest Classicvania experiences you can get. Now I know you're wondering, why did Belmont say that this game is elusive? Well, it's simple. Because it's simply impossible to acquire this game by standard means. You see, for some absolutely idiotic reason, this stellar game was only released digitally on the Nintendo Wii's eShop. Sure, a physical copy of this game would probably go for a ridiculously high price, but the game would still be available to play in a way. So if you want to play this, you're gonna have to resort to that word that starts with E and ends with emulator. A quick search on Google can help you with that. While I won't start a debate about this topic here, in this case, this is absolutely justifiable, in my opinion. If you're an old-timer to the series like myself, then let me know in the comments your recommendations for newcomers. And remember, on this video we're talking about Classicvanias only. And brace yourselves, because in the next video I will be bringing you the best of the best. Yes, I'm talking about the Metroidvanias, that altogether changed the face of the franchise and brought in hundreds of thousands of fans to the series, myself included. So this was Belmont speaking, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.